It's official. Donald Trump's trade war is back, and this time, Japan is right in the middle of it. Tariffs, angry tweets, tense negotiations. Sound familiar? Well, buckle up because Japan is trying to stay calm, protect its economy, and avoid getting crushed between Washington and Beijing. But can they pull it off? Let's break down what's happening, how Japan is handling the heat, and yes, what rice has to do with all of this. First, the basics. In 2024, Trump made his political comeback and wasted no time reigniting trade tensions. His message: America's been ripped off for decades, and countries like Japan owe the U.S. better trade deals. The targets? Japanese cars, steel, and aluminum, slapped with tariffs of up to 25% and even 50% in some cases. Trump also complains Japan blocks U.S. agricultural exports, especially rice. Talks between Tokyo and Washington have been dragging on for months, and with a new deadline looming, Trump has threatened to crank tariffs even higher, up to 35%, if Japan doesn't give him what he wants. So how is Japan responding? Well, very Japanese. Quiet, calculated, extremely polite but firm. Japan knows the US is its most important ally, economically and militarily. But Tokyo also refuses to be bullied into a bad deal. Japan's lead negotiator, Ryosei Akazawa, has been flying back and forth to Washington trying to cool things down. The message? Japan is open to some trade adjustments, but they won't sacrifice key industries like agriculture, especially not rice, just to please Trump. At the same time, Japan is keeping a low profile publicly, focusing on behind-the-scenes diplomacy rather than public fights. One of the biggest casualties in this trade battle? Japan's auto industry. Cars and car parts make up 20% of Japan's exports, and Trump's tariffs hit them hard. The result? The Nikkei stock index took a dive after the tariff threats. Car prices in the US have gone up, with companies like Toyota raising prices by hundreds of dollars to cover the extra costs. Some manufacturers are considering shifting more production inside the US to dodge tariffs, but that's expensive and complicated. Despite the uncertainty, Japanese businesses are staying cautious but hopeful. A recent Bank of Japan survey shows manufacturers are still slightly optimistic, but everyone's watching the next round of talks closely. The rice problem, small grain, big politics. Now let's talk rice. Seems simple, right? But when it comes to trade, rice is a political time bomb. Japan has fiercely protected its rice farmers for decades. Tariffs on foreign rice can be over 200%, making U.S. rice practically impossible to sell in Japan. Trump wants that to change, but Tokyo says rice isn't just an economic issue, it's a cultural and national security matter. In fact, Japan even released emergency rice reserves recently due to domestic shortages, yet they're still resisting U.S. pressure to open the market. For Japanese politicians, angering rice farmers is basically political suicide, especially with elections around the corner. All this raises a bigger question. Could Trump's aggressive tactics actually push Japan closer to China? It's complicated. Japan and China have their differences, territorial disputes, historic tensions, but when the US turns up the economic heat, Tokyo starts looking for backup. Japan has been quietly strengthening ties with ASEAN countries and even exploring new trade deals beyond Washington's influence. But make no mistake, Japan isn't ready to abandon its alliance with the US. In fact, Japan is ramping up defense spending and staying active in the Quad partnership with the US, Australia, and India. Still, the more Trump turns trade into a fight, the more Tokyo feels the need to hedge its bets. So where does this all leave Japan? Caught between a rock and a hard place, or more accurately, between Trump's trade demands and the need to protect their economy. Japan's strategy: negotiate but don't cave. Protect key industries like agriculture and autos. Keep the U.S. alliance strong, while quietly building alternative partnerships, just in case. The next few weeks will be critical. Will Trump get his better deal, or will tariffs go even higher? One thing's for sure, Japan is playing the long game with a cool head, quiet diplomacy, and maybe, just maybe, a bowl of rice by their side. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Trump's tactics will work, or is Japan too experienced to be pressured? See you next time.